On the first day of filming Faster with Finnegan, David Newbern got hit with a huge surprise.
Like day one of filming, I show up, expecting to just be a helper, and they mic me up, and I'm like, whoa, what's happening? Cotton's there, they mic him up, and we don't have any idea what's going on. And sure enough, we start filming, and we're just a part of this thing, and it's only the three of us.
Welcome to What Moves You, a Speedway Motors podcast where we tell the stories behind the cars and the people who build and drive them. I'm Joe McCullough. In this episode, David Newbern of Roadkill and Faster with Finnegan joins us to talk about Drag Week, how he came to work with the Roadkill crew, and the art of building outrageous cars with extremely tight deadlines. I always like to start at the very beginning because it's always a great story. How did you first get into cars and doing car stuff?
Oh man, my dad was a huge hot rod guy. We went to car shows every weekend, and he always traded. He might keep a car 6 months to a year, sometimes shorter than that. But man, he loved trading cars. There'd be times we go to the local cruise-ins, and he'd spot a car he liked. And I don't know how he done it, but he'd go there and talk to the guy, and we would trade cars on the spot and drive a different car home. That happened, I swear, dude, probably 20 times growing up. But we traveled all over the country to all the big car shows, all the local events everywhere. So every weekend.
What was your first car project of your own?
Age 13, my dad bought me a 64 Impala, two-door.
Did you get to see it through and actually drive it?
Oh yeah. We bought it from a family friend, had like 50,000 original miles on it. It had been sitting for 10 years, and we got it home. I remember him and I put either transmission fluid or some kind of oil or something in the cylinders and let it sit for a while. And it was a 283 two-barrel car, and it fired right up. It fired up. We went through the brakes on it, went through the fuel system, and he let me drive that car around the neighborhood when I was 13. So it was great.
So before you and your cars kind of started getting famous, for lack of a better way to describe it, were there any projects that stand out to you that maybe the rest of the world doesn't know about?
The only one that really, to me, stuck out that was a little abnormal was I had a 1926 Essex Coupe. It was pretty rare. I had actually I didn't really know anything about them until I traded a 71 Camaro for it.
Mm-hmm.
And it had a Buick nailhead when I got it. And as soon as I got it home, it started knocking. And I was like, damn. So I had a 2004 LS1 sitting in the garage floor. And this was back in '04, I think it was, 2005, somewhere in that area. Because the motor was like brand new. It come out of a wrecked GTO, had like 19,000 miles on it. But I was like, I'm young and dumb, so I was like, I'm taking that nailhead out. I'm gonna put the LS1 in this car. So I did. I took the nailhead out, put the LS1 in that car. It was a high boy, no hood, but I smoothed the valve covers, polished them. I hid the coil packs under the dash, run the plug wires in there, put a carburetor on it. I built just a giant set of headers, like they come outside the frame rail and just kind of run down the side of the car. And back then, it wasn't really that common yet to do all the LS swaps, especially in something like that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, dude, I think the car shows and the older dudes they didn't know what they were looking at, So, but that's probably about the most abnormal thing I had. Everything else was just C10s. I built a couple of 32 Fords, you know, just run of the mill street rod stuff.
So how did you and Finnegan meet?
It's very strange. I was a huge Roadkill fan. Okay. And when he moved from California to Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
he moved 20 minutes away from me. And he put a post up on Facebook. He was looking for a shear and a finger brake. And at the time, my father-in-law had a fab shop. He had all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I messaged him. I was like, hey, my father-in-law's got all that stuff. He said, you're welcome to come use it if you want. And so he messaged back. He was like, man, that'd be great. I'm just like, holy crap. Like he actually responded,
Hmm.
and like I don't know, a week later, we met at a gas station parking lot, and then I took him down there, and we spent the day we built some brackets to hold the intercooler in Game Over, the jet
Hmm.
boat,
Hmm.
and I mean, since that day, we stayed in touch. I'd go over every now and then, help him work on cars, and just progress from there.
And you were like professionally, you weren't like building cars in a hot rod shop or anything like that when you guys met, right?
Not at all. I was doing the opposite. I was installing gates and security cameras. I did that for 16 years,
Wow.
and then I just completely flip flopped when he offered me a job. I was like, all right, let's do it. So
So you just went straight full time, cut ties with your old job.
so there was 1 year where I helped him on Fridays. I worked 4 days a week from my other job, which I'm surprised they were okay with it. But every Friday I'd go help him 1 day a week, and then that was 2018. And then at the start of 2019, I went full time.
Did you have I had a moment when I first started like building cars for other people where I was just paralyzed that I was going to screw something up. Did you have a moment like that with him where you're kind of working with one of your heroes?
Yeah, especially at first, because we're working on Blasphemy,
Hmm.
Game Over. We're working on stuff like the caliber of stuff is I would never own. I mean, this is yeah. So it was very nerve wracking at
Hmm.
first, but now not so much. I know a lot more now than I did when I started, and
Oh
I'm
yeah.
learning every day. But yeah, it was like high dollar Hemi motors, especially the motor in Game Over. Like Jesus, that thing's a monster.
So I think that it's you guys' fault that now everybody's car project has to have some kind of clever name. But I think one of my all-time favorite names is the Attempted Murder Nova. How did that car come about, and how did it get its name?
I was also a Street Outlaw fan, and I had just a love for the Murder Nova,
Hmm.
and so I was building a car for Drag Week. I was actually building a '55 Chevrolet, and my neighbor right next door had a '71 Nova, and at the time I was selling a camper. This is weird. This is a weird story. I was selling a camper. I was talking to him one day, and I was like, he offered to trade me the Nova for the camper. I was like, yeah, let's do it. So then that's how I acquired the Nova. So then I had the cars next to each other, and the Nova was way in much better shape than the 55. I was like, well, I can get this car ready for drag week much quicker. So that's when I shifted over to the Nova, and then it was just a joke because I flat if I don't have the money to paint anything, I just flat black it. So when we're building the car, I was like, well, we should do like a knockoff name of the Nova,
Hmm.
or the Murder Nova. And then somebody threw out, I forget, was it? There were several names, but I was like, let's just do attempted murder. And everybody was like, that's awesome. So it stuck.
And you made it to Drag Week, and I mean that's kind of a big deal because that's something that a lot of us read about in the magazine or watch and dream of doing. What did it feel like doing Drag Week on your own?
It was very exciting. I couldn't, so I had help from two. My father-in-law helped me a lot. He put money in the car. My friend Brandon helped me a lot. It was definitely a team effort just to get there because it's expensive,
Hmm.
my car is slow compared to everybody else's. But just the fact, just getting there and participating was incredible, and
Hmm.
the people you meet, that was the best part. I met so many awesome people that I still talk to today. It was like a big family.
Hmm. Well, and you won Spirit of Drag Week, right? How did that happen?
My car had nitrous on it. It was a little 355 with what we thought was a 125 shot, turned out to be a 250 shot because the car would run like a mid 13s on motor, but it would get down like almost in the tens on the bottle. And I was like, this has got to be more than 125. But it loved it. And we were on day 4. We were in Bristol, Tennessee, and I was having problems with the nitrous coming on. And then it turns out I wanted to make a final pass, and the car ran like 11.3, 11.4, I think. And as soon as I crossed the finish line, I mean, it's a big nitrous backfire, and I shut it down. But long story short, the ground wire for one of the solenoids, the fuel solenoid, came off.
Mm-hmm.
So it was getting all the nitrous but no fuel. And it cracked all 8 pistons
Oh, jeez.
and melted the carburetor. So basically, we didn't want to give up. And we were calling all the parts stores trying to look for a long block, short block, anything. And we called, I think, in O'Reilly. And the guy behind the counter says, "Well, I have a motor, out of my Camaro is a 305 or 350. He's like, I'll sell it to you for $500. So we're like, awesome, we'll take it. So we go buy an engine hoist. We pull the motor out of my car outside the gate of Thunder Valley because we were scared we were going to get locked in.
Mm-hmm.
So we pulled the car out outside the gate next to the street, ripped the motor out of this thing while we waited on this other guy to deliver the motor to us. And little did we know he was at home pulling it out of his Camaro. He didn't tell us that part. So the motor showed up at like 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and we shoved it in there, and we were on the road by like 1 o'clock in the morning. We had to drive from Bristol, Tennessee back to Commerce, and none of us slept. We drove all through the mountains. It was a long, long drive, and I went through 3 alternators to get from there to there too. It was hell.
So maybe this is a good time to ask, if you were going to give advice to anybody who was contemplating doing drag week for the first time, what would that advice be?
I definitely don't regret it. And now it's an addiction. Now it's like, well, I have to find a way to go,
Mm-hmm.
So, get some friends. You can take up to like 4 people with you. So, I mean, get some help, get some friends, you know, pile your money together, get the rooms and everything so it's not so expensive, and just do it, man. They have classes for the slower cars. I think when I first did it, I was in the Street Machine Eliminator.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of 12, 13, 14-second cars in there.
That's like
And
a bracket
yeah,
race, basically. Yeah.
pretty much. Yeah, at the end of the week, they take the fastest cars and they run them.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, just doing the event was incredible. It was super fun. Just seeing all those cars, cruising with those cars down the highways and back roads. That's the best part.
Faster with Finnegan. How did that come to be?
2019, I had worked for Finnegan for about 6 months, and they came to him with an idea, and it was basically going to be him and another host, and I forget how it was going to be, but Cotton and myself weren't a part of the show. Like they were going to hire us to do like off-camera work,
Mm-hmm.
like work on the cars and just kind of help off camera. But when the time came, like day one of filming, I show up, expecting to just be a helper, and they mic me up, and I'm like, whoa, like what's happening, Cotton's there, they mic him up, and we don't have any idea what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, like we start filming, and we're just a part of this thing, and it's only the 3 of us. There's no co-hosts. It's just the 3 of us. So we were throwing a curveball right there at the start, but once we got into it, it was fun. We got more comfortable.
So if anybody hasn't seen the show, what describe the premise of the show?
Well, we try and take, affordable cars that you can relate to and put them up against other cars or racers, and we try and upgrade them. Not a lot of money. It's a small budget, just to see, how fast we can go, how much better we can make the car. And I think we start season 4 next week.
Oh, wow.
So, and out of the first 3 seasons, I think we've gone faster than the competitor like twice, maybe. But I mean, we've always been successful in making the car go faster than it did when we first got it.
Right.
So, but dude, it's really just us hanging out, working on trying different things, blowing cars up.
Yeah.
It's a good time.
One thing that I've noticed from the show, and I wonder to what extent you guys kind of planned for it, is it's almost like educational. Like rather than just saying, "Hey, we did a thing," and letting it be, glory on the racetrack, you always like stop and talk about, hey, here's how to read a spark plug, or whatever. Was that something that you intentionally kind of baked into the premise of the show?
That's yeah. I mean, that was the kind of the thing behind it is trying to show the audience like what you can do with this amount of money, and like and it's real. Like I mean, there's a lot of stuff we don't know. If
Mm-hmm.
we're trying something and we don't know how to do it, we'll be straight with you. You know, we'll tell you what we don't know what we're doing, but we're going to try this anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That was something that when Emily and Aaron were on the podcast, we were talking about how you guys have sort of earned the privilege of saying that you don't know. You have to work your way up to be able to say that you don't know and have people not barbecue you on the internet. But you guys have proven that you know how to do everything else. So if you have to admit that you don't know something, it always comes out okay.
I mean, we get the job done one way or the other. I mean, we can make it happen. We can make it work. It may not be the right way, but you know,
Do you have a favorite episode so far?
oh yeah, oh yeah. I don't know what's going to top it, but it was the Dennis Anderson episode. We went to his place for a week and got to walk around. First off, he is real. Like he is an awesome guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like what you see is what you get. Like he treated us like family, and he cut up, and there was so much stuff that they couldn't put on camera, but it was
Mm-hmm.
great, man. His whole family, man, everybody there treated us like family. But like just me going like through all his storage trailers and all his tools and just all that stuff, I'm like, who gets to do this? I'm like rummaging through all his parts, old blowers and old headers and just
Mm-hmm.
motors laying everywhere and old bodies like gravedigger bodies laying in the back and chassis and yeah, I don't know what's going to top that.
There is a lot of car shows out there in the world. What is it about kind of the roadkill and roadkill shows that you think sets them apart from everything else that's out there?
uh, we're real. Nothing scripted. What you see on camera is, they basically point a camera at us and let it roll. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, there's no, like I said, there's no script. So if it blows up, it blows up. Whatever happens, happens. That's what you get.
So I'm thinking of the death metal Charger. Like that is a super unconventional 2JZ Supra engine in a Charger.
Hmm.
And what is it? It's that runs on the tears of Mopar fans or whatever.
Yeah,
Like I, that is something that I've noticed happening more and more is really unconventional swaps. Stuff that you just wouldn't expect coming out of nowhere. And I'm wondering if that was sort of a movement that you guys kind of started.
I don't know. It's funny you say that. There's a guy the other day. It's a kid. He's got a 60, I think a 68 Firebird, and he was like, he's putting a 2JZ in it.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, "You inspired me to put a 2JZ in my 68." I'm like, "Oh, geez, let the haters commence."
I mean, and that's something, if you look back in like the 50s, the Little Page, Carcraft, and Hot Rods, they were doing all sorts of kooky swaps. They were putting
Oh yeah,
Buick nailheads and F1 pickups and Olds rockets in Corvettes. And, I kind of dig it. I kind of think, that kind of creativity, I'd rather see that than a Chevy and a Chevy and a Ford and a Ford and a
yeah.
Mopar and a Mopar.
I'm the same way. Like I'd rather see your car driving down the road. I don't care what it's got in it.
Right.
Just I want to see it going down the road. You know, and Cadillac engines were big back in the day. Like I saw a lot of 40 Fords and stuff that
Mm-hmm.
had Cadillac motors in them. So
I heard Freiberger say several times, like people ask why we do this to ourselves, like why do we do this last minute thrash, kill ourselves kind of thing, and he says it's because that's the only way it gets done. Because otherwise,
yeah,
it's like it's going to sit in the driveway and it's going to sit in the garage, and there's always going to be other stuff to do. But if you give yourself some kind of crazy deadline, then you're going to
hmm,
at least have a car that you can drive.
yep. Well, like on the 57, when I first got that car, my goal was to take it to cruising the coast in October,
Mm-hmm.
and which was like 6 months after I got the car. You know, and man, I would go to work at Finnegan's between filming and then working at Finnegan's and shooting roadkill. Like all my spare time, I'd come home. I wouldn't even come in the house. I'd just turn up to the shop and just go
Mm-hmm.
in there and work till 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. But but I got it done,
Hmm.
and actually I didn't cut much corners on it. I did it. I put the floor pans in it and rhino lined it and
Hmm.
fat matted everything, and like I actually took a lot of time and did it right and made my deadline.
For pictures of David and some of the cars we've talked about in this episode, check out the toolbox at speedwaymotors.com by clicking the toolbox link on the front page. New episodes of What Moves You come out every 2 weeks on Tuesdays. If you like what you hear, tell a friend to listen to What Moves You on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Thrashing to build on a deadline tends to take all your time, let alone completing one on a TV schedule. So how does an automotive TV personality balance the hectic filming schedule with a family? People would say that you have kind of a dream job, but it's a lot of work. I mean, how do you balance the work and you have a family too, right?
And it's just a wife, and it's tough. We work a lot, and I try and spend as much time with them as I can. In the mornings I'll get up and we'll go have breakfast, and I'll take them to school, and so in the mornings I spend as much time as I can with them before I go to work.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the weekends I try and do nothing but spend time with them. So,
Well, and you kind of the car thing was kind of passed down to you from your dad. Is that something that you're working to pass down to your kids?
oh yeah, my that's what my son's just all over it. You know, he's already he picks out something new every day.
Mm-hmm.
But he's got a little 34 Ford go-kart that we've been working on. He's into four wheelers and side by sides, and I just yesterday I bought a K5 Blazer, and I bought my old uh, rock crawler back.
Mm-hmm.
So he's all excited about that.
So those are the projects you plan to work on with him.
Oh yeah, he well, if I'm out in the shop, he's out in the shop. He has his toolbox. He does his own thing out there. I'll look over and he'll have either the four wheeler or the little 34 go kart. He'll have it up on jack stands and jacked up and be up under it working on it.
Mm-hmm.
He pulled the damn motor off the go kart the other day. And I thought, what are you doing? He pulled it apart. Took the motor off. I'm like, dude, like you just tore your own go kart.
Well, how old is he?
7.
Okay. Well, that's how he's going to learn to put it back on, right?
That's right. That's why I let him go. I'm like, whatever, man. Go to town.
Speaking of personal projects, you mentioned the 57, and there's kind of a cool story there, right?
Yeah. Early last year, um, I was on a road trip out to Arizona. I was meeting Finnegan out there. They were wrapping up an episode of Roadkill, and and he had bought a new boat, so we were getting that boat and the old boat back to Georgia. So I drove one of our ramp trucks out there, or one of our enclosed ramp trucks. We put one inside of it and one behind it.
Mm-hmm.
But on the way out there, I was in the middle of Texas. I didn't even know where I was at the time. I just look over and I see this small junkyard, and I thought, man, I was like, they look like a bunch of Tri Fives. I didn't get a good look. I was like, man, I swear that was Tri Fives over there. So I tried to remember like, kind of the area I was at, but I wasn't really sure. So I went on out, picked him up on the way back. Man, I was trying to find it so bad I couldn't stand it. And then road work took us off the interstate for a long time. I
Mm-hmm.
thought we've missed it. I was like, dude, we've went around it by now. And then by the time we got back on the interstate, we went maybe 5 minutes, and I saw it. I was like, dude, I was like, there it is, there it is, there it is. And we got closer and closer, and it was all 57s, and it was like 60 of them. I'm just like freaking out, and so we're like, all right, we got to stop. So we turned around, and we had a hell of a rig. This the
Mm-hmm.
truck was 40 foot long. Then we had a you know 24-foot boat behind it. So we swung around, got pulled up in front of it, and everything was all closed and locked up. But there was a number on the door, and so I called the number, and this guy by the name of Dickie Jones answered, which I'm surprised there was a number, and I'm surprised he answered. And I was like, hey, I'm out here, looking at your stuff. Is anything for sale? Because at that time I had a 57 150 two-door post,
Mm-hmm.
and I needed a bunch of parts for it. I needed doors and a front clip. And I said, "Is any of this stuff for sale?" He says, "No, I don't want to sell any of that stuff." So I was like, "All right." So we hung up. I thought that was it, right? And so we're looking around, and there was a hard top by the fence. And so I called him back. I was like, is there any cars for sale? He's like, nope, no cars are for sale. He was like, well, the only thing that's for sale is that old hardtop over there, and it's rough. So I'm like, all right. So I hung up again. Okay. So we walk over there, and I'm looking at the hardtop, and I'm thinking, like, damn, this car's a lot nicer than the one I got at home that I'm trying to fix. So I call him back. I'm like, well, how much do you want for this hardtop? He was like, $2,500. And I'm like, how close are you? I was like, are you here? I was like, can you let me in? He's like, I'll be there in 5 minutes. So a few minutes goes by. He pulls up in a 40 Ford Coupe. Beautiful car. And I love 40 Fords too. My dad had a bunch of them growing up.
Oh, yeah.
And so he lets us in. And he was a roadkill fan. As soon as he got out of the car and saw Finnegan, he was like, I know you. So he let his guard down. He let us in. He showed us around his shop, showed us all, gave us a tour around the yard. And then I ended up buying the hard top, and it worked out. And I went back the next weekend and picked it up.
Mm-hmm. And then you obviously it needed everything to get it running, right? So talk about the drivetrain and stuff that you put in it, because you didn't just poke a 8-to-1 compression 305 in it.
No. So the car had been sitting since 70, like the late 70s. It's been sitting for years. When he got it, it had a 409 and a 4-speed in it, which I thought was cool.
That's
so
awesome.
He put that in something else, but I mean, the car needed everything. All the windows were busted out of it. Kids got in the yard and busted all the glass out of all the cars. And but I got it home, got it stripped down, and I had the 454 out of the roadkill ramp truck sitting there. It ran great, and we had just put a camshaft in it for an episode of Roadkill when it was in my Nova. That was like a motor that got passed around. It was in the ramp truck, my Nova. It got put in the Cadillac for a short time, and then we put it in the 57. So, but yeah, it was pretty much a crate motor 454 with a small camshaft, and then I put my T56 6-speed behind it, and then I put a Ford 9-inch in the back. So it was a great combo.
And you made your Cruising the Coast deadline, and then did Power Tour this year too, right?
I did Sick Week too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I did Cruising the Coast. The car did great. I had a few bugs to work out, but man, overall, I put like, I don't know, 800 miles on it the first trip, That was in October. February, I took it down to Florida, and we did what's called the Sick Ward, which basically we just followed along the race weekers and just went stop to stop. I did a lot of videoing and stuff down there and covered the event. And then, then this past June, I did Power Tour. The car's got like 2,500 miles on it now. So,
and that's another, since you sort of have all these experiences that a lot of the other people sort of sit around and dream about. If you were going to give advice to somebody who was about ready to road trip their car that they had just thrown together, what would that advice be?
Well, depending on what time of the year it is, I will not be going back to a Power Tour without air conditioning because that was horrible. I mean, it wasn't horrible. I'd do it again, but man, I was really jealous of the people in the newer cars. Don't get me wrong with the air conditioning. But yeah, don't be scared. That's all I can say. Just do it. Take the essentials, like depending on what kind of distributor you got. Take a coil
or a module.
Take a module. Take the usual. Take a fuel pump. Just take a couple of spare parts and don't be scared. Just go.
You guys sort of personify the old phrase, drive it like you know how to fix it. I feel like that's something, if you guys lead by example, that's what you're doing.
I mean, I rarely leave the house. If I break down, I will find a way to fix it somehow. So my dad did that too. Like growing up, he was against trailers. Like he was like, I am not putting my car on a trailer. He drove his cars everywhere, all over the country. So
do you have any memories of having to do a roadkill fix with your dad?
Yeah. So we were on the he had a 36 Ford at the time, and we were on the way home from cruising the coast from Biloxi, and it had a small block Chevrolet in it, and one of the rocker arm studs pulled out of the head. So it had pressed in studs,
Mm-hmm.
but one of the studs uh, worked its way out, and I remember him. We did something. I think he might have like pulled the push rod out and tried to tie the lifter up or something, and we made it like 2 hours from home,
Mm-hmm.
and then it gave out. But we had to get a tow from there. But yeah, it's I'm sure there's much more, but that one for some reason that one stuck out.
Along the lines of your personal projects, are we allowed to talk about the 55? So what are your plans there?
Well, about 4 hours ago, Finnegan dropped it on me that he wants to build a new 55. He wants to go fast, fast, fast,
Faster than blasphemy?
way faster. He wants to be in the sixes.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, he was like, so he was talking to me. He was like, dude, I was like, I want to build something new. I don't want to butcher up blasphemy. He was like, I want to go sixes. He was like, and I want to do it in a tri five. I want to do it in a 55. Now I'm sitting there. I'm like, because I have mine is just a shell of a body, dude.
Mm-hmm.
It needs a chassis, but it is just the body. And just yesterday, like I said, I bought a sweet K5 Blazer, rust free, beautiful project. So I have that in the back of my head. I have a lot of projects, but I'm sitting there. I'm like, oh man. I was like, I have the perfect 55 for you. Uh, so it hadn't happened yet, but there's a 50-50 chance that he may end up with that to build himself a 6 acre car.
That's a change of pace from what you had in mind for it, right?
Yes. Yeah, I was wanting to build a radical street car out of it. Something I could, you know, drive on the street, but also take to the track from time to time. But yeah, it's gonna be a full. If he does it, it'll be a full tube chassis. But he changes his mind daily, like literally. I will go in there tomorrow, and it'll be something wildly different, and he will change his mind. So that's why I'm not holding my breath. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
because he was going over all these different cars he wanted to do, and I was like, well, we have options. So
That you mentioned two-lane blacktop here one of the last times we were talking, and I feel like that needs to be acknowledged because that movie, not a surprisingly few car guys have seen that movie because it was kind of an obscure weirdo
oh yeah,
1971 movie, and like, but it's such a great car movie. And I have tried for years to describe that movie to somebody who's never seen it, and I fail every time. So why don't you take a stab at it? Describe Two Lane Blacktop to somebody who's never seen it.
it's just too. Oh man, you're right. It's two buddies. You got a mechanic and a driver, and they basically just travel around the country street racing for money, and that's how they get by. And I think their end goal is probably to do like a major event, and to make a name for themselves. But they literally just go from town to town, just street racing, hustling people, and trying to make money. And but like you said, like the movie, it's a weird movie. The acting's not that great, but damn, the cars in that movie are incredible. And I just noticed I watched it again for like the 100th time, 3 or 4 days ago. The Finnegan just acquired a clone, a 70 Dodge Daytona. Horrible car. It's rough. It's horrible. I didn't notice, but in the very first pair of race cars in that movie is a Daytona.
Mm-hmm.
I just realized that, and I've watched it all this time. I was like, oh my god, I was never looking for it though. But yeah, and Finnegan's like, yeah, that's some famous guy that had 3 or 4 of those cars.
Was it, what was his name? Big Willie? The
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that was his car in the first pair down in 2 lane blacktop.
I think that movie, there's an arc to that movie. The first time you see it is terrible, but maybe after like the 50th time or so, you really sort of start to appreciate it as a movie beyond just the cars. Because it's one of those weirdo like 70s, kind of like Vanishing Point, Easy Rider. Like there's not a whole lot of dialogue. It's just kind of the hippie traveling around the country. But man, the cars are great.
Yeah, all the gas station stops, they're just all the towns they're driving through. They pull up and tilt the front end, and you
Hmm.
see the big block and the 2.4s, and you just it's just cool as hell. And that 32 that they raced in the movie. You know.
Yeah, the green thing with the big block.
hmm
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was
There's
super cool.
and they go to the drag strip at one point, and there's a lot of probably
Oh
fairly
yeah.
famous early '70s cars, but you see they're like front engine dragsters still. And
Oh yeah. Yeah. There's Camaros and just all kind of awesome stuff at the drag strip. Yeah, there's no telling. Oh man. See, now I'm gonna have to go watch it again.
I mean, you got a lot of projects. There was another one that we had talked about before. It's a 33 or 34 sedan, right?
One of my dad's friends, he's passed now, but and this was a car that I grew up around when I was, you know, 10, 11, 12, 13. My dad's friend had this car, and it was one that they would travel with us all over the country. So I rode in this car a lot when I was a kid. I would ride in everybody's car. That was my thing. Like, if you were traveling with us, I'm like, I want to ride in your car. I would switch and just go to
Hmm.
everybody's cars. I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. I probably got on a lot of people's nerves, but I was in their cars. But he sold this. My dad's friend sold this car and bought a different 34. He bought a 34 coupe, but this car went. It was semi-local. It was only like half an hour from us, but this guy bought it and put it in a semi-trailer for 17 years.
Oh man.
And this car was beautiful. Like, I was like, I can't believe he put that car in there. Never drove it. Like, just tucked it away. So I guess it's been about 4 years now. 4 years ago, I was on my dad. I kept thinking about the car, over the years. I was like, hey, you still got so and so's number. I was like, why don't you call him just see if he still has that car and what's his plans with it. So he calls him. I was like, I still got it sitting out there in the trailer. And my dad's like, well, would you sell it? He was like, yeah, I'd probably sell it. So I'm like, oh, let's go look at it. Let's just see if it's in one piece. I got to see what the car looks like.
Hmm.
Sure enough, we go over there and the car is identical to when it was, like back when I was a kid. I have pictures of it, like old pictures of this car in like parking lots, and it's identical. So we go over there and he throws out a price and I'm like, I'll take it. I said I bought it, and so that car's never going anywhere. But yeah, it's sitting at my dad's house.
And do you need to work on it at all before you can drive it?
No, luckily we pulled it out of his shed thing, and I went through the fuel system on it, and I went through, put a new distributor in it, plugs, wires, all the basics,
Hmm.
and it fired right up, and I drove it to Biloxi for cruising the coast. And but yeah, it just every now and then we'll pull it out and drive it around. But I'd love to update that car and just keep it's got like an 80s paint. You should see the interior. It looks like a 80s couch.
Oh yeah.
It's with all the little buttons everywhere like they used to do. Like the whole headliner is, it's straight from the 80s, dude.
What comes next for you? For the show? What's the future hold?
There's opportunities all the time. I just don't know. It's like I'm basically maxed out,
Hmm.
right at the moment. So I'm just, if I can keep going with where I'm going right now, I'll be totally happy. But the Faster with Finnegan, I love doing it because I get to hang out with my friends, and
Hmm.
that's totally real. Like, we're all actually really close friends, and what you see on camera is that's how we are. Like, we'll be out in public, and people will just come up and they're like, "Y'all actually hang out?" I was like, "What do you mean? Yeah, yeah, we hang out." A lot of shows are, like I said, they're not real, but
Hmm.
that's we're like that 24/7. So, but I do enjoy that show, and I hope it continues to be successful, and we get to keep doing that.
Hmm. I mean, that really does come through in the show that you guys genuinely like each other and that you're not scripted to like each other.
Like I said, me and Cotton couldn't act anyway. Like, there's no way. Like, we're just, it's just not the card for us. But they let us be ourselves. They let us, explain stuff how we want to explain it, work on whatever we want to work on. Like the cars, you know, half the cars we pick out. Like, I just bought a Tahoe like a couple days ago for the show. It's like
Hmm.
a '94 two-door Tahoe. we're gonna play with it. And but like a lot of the cars we pick out, and I'll go buy them.
Did you have some adjustment to figure out how to be yourself with the camera on you?
Oh yeah, that took a while, and it's still after the first season. It like I said, the first season you can tell we're a little, especially me and Cotton, we're just a little, rusty. But I got more comfortable. He's gotten more comfortable. So like now we can act up, we can joke and not care. But it's still a little weird. Like we'll be working on something, and then all of a sudden there's two cameras in your face. You're like, and it's just, I don't know why, but you totally change. It's like, oh, I don't know what to do. But we've definitely gotten more comfortable, and like I said, they'll just stand back and just hold the camera, and we'll just do whatever we want. So a lot of freedom.
Thanks to David Newbern for being our guest today, and thanks to all of you for listening to What Moves You, a Speedway Motors podcast. Find pictures from today's episode on the toolbox at speedwaymotors.com. Email the podcast at podcast@speedwaymotors.com, and if you like what you heard, tell a friend where to find us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.